Wonderful. Okay, I see our participants coming in here. I'm going to give us just a few moments for the room to populate. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, it is so good to be with everybody today. My name is Emily Vorty, and I am the White House liaison to disabled Americans. And it is my incredible honor to be here today with so many storytellers from South Florida as we have a conversation about how invaluable home and community-based services and additional funding for home and community-based services are to the South Florida community. Before we get started with hearing from some of our storytellers, I want to kick us to our very esteemed guest. We're so grateful for her willingness to join us today. Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services, Andrea is with us. And Deputy Secretary, I will turn it over to you. Again, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Emily. I can tell you, as a recently returned Fed from the state of Wisconsin, running our home and community-based services program for the state, I can tell you firsthand the importance of this issue, the importance of making sure we're doing all that we can to support families and caregivers in this space. And so I really am grateful that you asked me to participate today. It's an issue that's near and dear to my heart and so critical to the work that we do here at HHS. So I really do appreciate it. And obviously it's so important for the South Florida community to be able to come together and tell their stories and hear how we can connect with them with the proposals that have been put forward. And to that end, the Build Back agenda is quite frankly the most consequential set of plans since the Great Society and the New Deal from generations ago. And it can be summarized like this. Build Back Better means rebuilding our country post-pandemic so that no one is left behind. Not our older Americans, not our Americans with disabilities, and not our caregiver workforce. Since the beginning of the pandemic, older Americans, Americans with disabilities, and the caregiver workforce have shown a lot of grit through the disproportionate challenges that they have faced, isolated from family and friends, separated from community resources, and at greater risk of serious illness and even death from COVID-19. They've set an example of resilience for all of us to follow by overcoming hardships and finding new and creative ways to thrive. COVID-19 has created a national urgency to expand and strengthen our home and community-based service system, and we are seizing this opportunity. Home and community-based services make it possible for millions of seniors and people with disabilities, as well as those with chronic illnesses, to live in their homes and communities. Already, thanks to the Build Back Better agenda, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is working with states like Florida to take full advantage of a significant increase in federal funding for Medicaid home and community-based services provided through the American Rescue Plan. This opportunity has been met with great enthusiasm, including by states like Florida. It's estimated that nationally, federal spending for home and community-based services could increase by about $12.7 billion thanks to the American Rescue Plan. But President Biden's proposed historic $400 billion investments that we are here to discuss today would go even further. It would provide a necessary investment in the insufficient service system that support people with disabilities and our aging Americans. It would create jobs and raise wages in an effort to encourage Americans to enter and stay in the caregiver workforce, including here in Florida and in Fort Myers Beach. These caregiving jobs will also provide workers with necessary benefits and the ability to collectively bargain. In all, the President's proposed $400 billion Build Back Better investment would allow providers to expand services and programming, create infrastructure needed to support those currently without the services that they need, and provide funding for states to address the home care workforce crisis. Most of us will need assistance at some point in our lives, whether that is from family or friends or through services provided in our homes. So as we build back better together, the Biden-Harris administration has committed to ensuring that we build the infrastructure we need to provide those services and support informal caregivers, because as I have said, building back better means that no one gets left behind. So thank you again so much for having me here with you today, Emily, and I hope that you all enjoy the rest of your discussion this morning. I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much. We're so grateful for the work that you're doing to ensure, again, that this historic funding is passed. We're so excited that, to your point, that a down payment of sorts has been made to ensure that Americans with disabilities and aging Americans are supported. And now moving forward, we know additional funding is necessary to ensure that those resources are sustainable. Again, to not only ensure that our caregiving workforce is supported, but to ensure that they are able to provide high quality care for our South Floridian family and friends in need of care. So thank you so much for your time, Deputy Secretary. I want to start us off now with some of our storytellers. Again, folks from your community, the South Florida community, that are here to tell us about what it means to care and to be cared for in South Florida, and some of the constraints that they've seen on resources and their ability to do their jobs and provide care effectively. Again, for those that they love in their communities. So I want to start with one of our storytellers, Mrs. Dorothy Washington. And Mrs. Washington has been a longtime resident in the community of Homestead, Florida. As you know, one of the areas that was most affected during the pandemic. For over 29 years, she has worked for the ARC of South Florida as the residential coordinator and as a direct service provider. Her many years of working with adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities has made her a strong advocate, making sure that they receive the best services available. So, Mrs. Washington, I'm going to turn it over to you. Really looking forward to hearing about you and your work. Mrs. Washington, I believe that you are unmuted. There we go. Wonderful.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. Because this year was one of the years out of the 29 years that I've been employed with the ARC and at the group home, I had never, ever been through such disaster as this year, because my group home encountered the coronavirus. Myself on December 24th, my staff's on the 25th, and the clients thereafter. And I tell you, I only have 4 staffs, and I'm the youngest of the staff, 63 years old. The others are older. And what we encounter, I went in the hospital. I came out on January the 10th. My staff relied on me just to hear my voice to keep them going. And everyone was ill in the home. We didn't have the funding to have someone come at the cost that they wanted to come out and help us. I was discharged, had to come to the group home and quarantine on the patio of the group home, where there's a joining door into the home, so that my staff could be relieved to go and get medical attention themselves also. While the clients was ill, I reached out to the CEO, and he assured me, Dorothy, I'm doing the best that I can do, but at the funding that we have, no one wants to come in at that rate. Everybody was looking for a much higher rate during that period, and no one was willing to come out to help. And I tell you, when I tell you the tears that fell from my eyes to see my clients hopeless, my staff hopeless. We couldn't get anybody to come and help us. I used my son, who wasn't even employed with the agency, to come in to help me to get some of the individuals to doctor's appointments, to get medical attention because we couldn't get anybody in. The CEO, he got just frustrated with me because I kept calling. We need help out here. We need help. But Dorothy, I have a long list. I'm doing the best that I can do. There's no more I can do. I reached out. I've offered them more than we can even afford to pay someone to come in to help you, but no one is responding. And I tell you, we need something in place where when we have a disaster of some sort that we can't hear, nobody wants to come. I mean, this was the devastating moment in my life because my staff looked at me. The more I looked like I was falling apart, the more they fell apart. And to see that, and the clients who wasn't aware of what was happening to them, and to just to see this, to endure this, I mean, as their supervisor, as their manager, the tears that fell from my eyes, I didn't know what to do anymore. I mean, you're never trained for this type of disaster. And I wasn't trained. There's nobody can teach you how to handle a situation when this occurred. You reach out to the CEO. He did everything he could do, but no one wanted to come out. We need a floater. We need funds where we can always have a floater in place, that whether it's vacation, whether it's a disaster, whether it's anything, we need someone in place that's going to be available to relieve any staff, because my staff are older staff. They are all I have. The younger generation don't want this type of work, to work with this type of population. And then they really rely on me. My health, they monitor it more closely than I monitor my own health, because whatever I do depends on what their decision of what they do. So I am so grateful that something is being in place where the funding is already there. We don't have to go out and look for funding to try and bring staff in to help us when crises occur in our life like this. And COVID is real. It is real. 4 days, I couldn't even walk the first 4 days in the hospital, but I had to still keep in contact with my staff because they was relying on me. They were not trained to deal with this type of disaster either. And just to hear my voice is what kept them going till I can get out of the hospital. And I quarantined. The CEO don't even know. I quarantined at the group home on the other side of the patio. And I had no choice because there was no one to come in here and help us. So I really thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Washington. And thank you for what is truly your service during such a, world-altering, country-altering pandemic, ensuring continued high-quality support of your colleagues and of the folks in your care. So thank you so much for being with us today. I want to turn our story over to Mrs. Yolanda Herrera. Looking for outdoor living to raise her family, Mrs. Herrera arrived in South Florida from Chicago during the summer of 1977, making sunny Miami their permanent home. Her daughter, Carla, was born in May of 1984, joining 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Under Governor Jeb Bush, Carla was invited to participate in the Medicaid home and community-based waiver, changing her life, Carla's lives, and their family's lives forever. So Mrs. Herrera, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much, and thank you, Carla, for being with us here today.
Well, very good morning. Let me introduce you. This is Carla. Say hi.
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 I guess every day is a learning. There's an opportunity to learn something. Just listening to Deputy Secretary Miss Andrea Pound and listening to Miss Washington, it's brings another outlook to me even before we get started. I'm glad that Miss Pound is talking about upgrading, elevating to a better level our workforce that does this particular care. And Ms. Washington, I am so sheltered, had no idea of the tribulations that even if my daughter were to be in one of your facilities, she would have to go through. We always thought of keeping our Carla at home. And we have worked very diligently to ensure that that is going to be the case. However, we live in South Florida and we are constantly under the threat of hurricanes, and in this particular instance, the pandemic. And I know that when it all began, we all went home and closed our doors and were safe. But in your position, that was something different. Thank you for opening my eyes to what other threats are there. I have, just because I have so many things to share with you, I made a little list of items. And first of all, I do want to thank for this opportunity to participate in this roundtable. I hope that our comments do make a statement that is going to improve. I'm going to start by talking about our Carla and her willingness to work hard, resulting in the skills needed to become a baker apprentice, her chosen career. She graduated in 2006 with a special diploma. Afterwards, attended a vocational program in baking for 1 year, and she has been baking ever since. She makes cookies and she bakes biscotti, an Italian cookie, as an indirect result of the pandemic. She's no longer working in her craft. However, she continues to practice at home so that there will be no loss of skills that she has worked so hard to attain, and she will be ready to resume once we conquer this virus. All of this in spite of her developmental delay, which severely affected her ability to communicate, among other things. But we just say that she has cerebral palsy and leave it at that. My turn. I am becoming an aging adult, faster than I care to admit. And as I am preparing for the day that I won't be watching over Carla, my biggest concern is who will be providing the support for both of us, as we're going to be requiring in a not so very distant future. For me, I like to age in place. For my daughter, her continued thriving in the community. And last, my wish would be to find a person or persons who can come to work with a very good attitude, that has been properly trained to handle Carla's behavior challenges. Some of who is going to take me to my appointments, my doctor's appointments, courteously, not like she's doing me a favor. I have been fortunate to meet a large number of families whose chronic complaint is the untrained workers that are providing critical care in the home and critical care services in the home. May I suggest that as we are talking about the caregiver workforce, let's raise the bar. We need to raise the bar that will include proper skill training required to be an efficient worker. Let's make this profession instead of just a job. I think the persons that provide this particular caregiving service, and I'm not going to call caregiving because there is more than care. There are support is what it is most required, because a lot of adults, when I get older, not that I'm not, I would want somebody just to give me a hand with the items that I'm not longer able to to do. For my daughter, we're trying so diligently to learn to teach her how to care for herself, but she still is going to need some support so that she continues to be a good member of her community. Please do not misunderstand my comments. Better care, better jobs at Florida. It's a golden opportunity. And I feel it is my responsibility to voice my concern, as well as is my insecurity towards my daughters and my future. Given the nature of what it is required of an individual who chooses this profession, I cannot emphasize enough the fact that any person that comes into my home to provide support is going to have to be not just a good-hearted person, but a skilled person. For many years, I have heard that there should be a training for caregivers. And especially, I'm also going to make another suggestion. Caregivers is just a generalizing law, as much as important as it is. It just means that just to provide care, just to, nothing fancy. On the other hand, someone that comes, as I was saying, someone that comes into my home needs to be knowledgeable, needs to be, suppose I fall, needs to provide some care right there. Suppose my daughter has a breakdown, needs to be able to know how to calm her down, how to have some techniques that are going to provide her with the stepping down on that on a we call it a meltdown. Again, let's make this not just a job. Let's turn this into a profession now that we have the opportunity to have funding. I'm going to include in my advocacy the situation that Ms. Washington had faced, which was foreign to me, given the fact that we never thought of visiting a group home. However, thank you, Ms. Washington. You have brought an incredible revelation to me of the difficulties that we can have, not under the pandemic, which is what we're facing right now, but under a hurricane, which we have lived through so many, not electricity. How are we going to have food? Now I can multiply that how many times full as the residents that you have. Once again, thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate the time that you've given us, and on behalf of my daughter Carla, myself, and so many other families that are going to be the beneficiaries of what we're doing today. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Herrera, and thank you to Carla. I want to just amplify two things that you said that I think are so valuable. One being that so frequently our home caregivers, those in our family, our guardians, they themselves age and then necessitate care. So seeing the life cycle of care and knowing that we need sustainable funding, sustainable pipelines of care to ensure, again, that not only our disabled communities, but that our aging communities have the resources that they need to age in place, to live in place, to live in their communities. And two, something else that I want to amplify that you said, that caregiving is not just a job, but it is a profession. It is so personal and it is so intimate in ways that many of us won't be able to understand, that it is more than just going through and checking off tasks on a to-do list, but it necessitates empathy and care and interpersonal skills and immense amounts of sacrifice. And that's why we know the good-natured, good, high-quality folks that enter the profession. And the President's Build Back Better agenda would ensure that these folks are have the resources that they need to be both highly trained, but also to ensure that they're being compensated fairly for their work, so that they can are drawn to the profession and stay in the profession. So again, just wanted to highlight those two pieces, Mrs. Herrera. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you to Carla. I want to now
if I may.
I want to now turn our conversation over to Mrs. Licenia. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mrs. Herrera.
I'm sorry. I thought I was talking and it was muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
In my words, I mentioned my wish, but I also omitted to say that my wish and for my daughter and for me would not be possible if not for a necessary funding stream. That is the crucial. I can have so many wishes, but if the funding is not there to support those wishes, it's not going to happen. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Herrera. I want to now turn our conversation over to Mrs. Licenia Waiver, who is a self-advocate with over 10 years of experience working and volunteering with students through nonprofit organizations, providing peer mentoring services to at-risk children and teens and those with disabilities, both mental and physical disabilities. Ms. Waiver has successfully made over 1,000 presentations to groups ranging in size from 20 to 500 plus in the Tri-County area regarding disability and acceptance. And we're so grateful that she is here with us today to talk a little bit about her experience. So thank you so much, Ms. Waiver. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity, and what we've been hearing so far has been very insightful, so I greatly appreciate it. I want to talk to you guys from two perspectives. One, as a self-advocate, I am someone with a developmental disability, born with spina bifida, and because of my disability, I've been able to do so many things and accomplish so much that doctors could have never imagined that I would accomplish today. With that, I also have the opportunity of being a service provider for individuals with disabilities. So the fact that I can be on both sides as a person with a disability and a service provider for those with disabilities is very unique and something I love very, very much. Through my voice, through my experience, is how I've been able to be a voice for those with disabilities, because I've kind of been there, done that, in a sense, right? So, so being in that situation is very unique and very, very awesome. As a service provider, I've had many encounters and I've seen many things, you know, the good and the not so good that I would like to bring a light to this morning based on what we have already been hearing. I worked in an adult day training program where I was actually the office manager. I had the title of the office manager, and it was about 3 years before COVID, and then COVID happened. COVID happened, it totally shut down. I lost my job. Our students were now back at home or in their group homes. They were not with us there. And I'm very passionate as it pertains to working with the clients and making sure that their needs are met. We closed, I lost my employment. There was a lot of regression from all of our students and clients that we were serving, even before COVID happened. Because at that time, and even now when I talk to some of them are only receiving 30 minutes of behavior therapy. So if we could imagine the regression, the lack of activity because of COVID, and only receiving 30 minutes and then receiving no therapy for their behaviors, I was receiving a lot of calls of Baker Act, of violent behavior, of them possibly being kicked out of their group home, the only place that they call home. So it was a very stressful time for them as the client, but also for me working from home, not being able to get to them, not being able to see them and calm them down and just be that voice that would usually be in their ear, you know, to avoid these situations. And that really hit me. So I feel that we need a more streamlined service to really care and really do what we can, all of what we can do as providers for our clients. A lot of clients are in a situation where they have to choose between services. They have to choose between adult daycare or do I get enough funding for behavior therapy. As in my case, I'm also on the Medicaid waiver. I might get someone to visit me once a month, but I don't receive dental, or I don't receive physical therapy that could help me very much in my mobility and walking better. So as a client perspective, how can I better monitor my funding and where it's going, and the services that I truly need versus what I am getting as it pertains to my budget system. And lastly, based on the proposal rather, as recipients of services, yes, we definitely need consistency of costs, of the cost share between the federal government and the state. Excuse me. And on the description that we received, it really broke it down for me to better understand that specifically, where the funding is coming from. And so therefore, we as recipients of services, we have different income requirements. And because we have those different income requirements to follow, whether federal versus the state, it makes it that much more difficult for us to become financially independent while still being able to receive those services. So as in my personal situation, I find myself in a situation where I can only work part-time, because if I go over that certain income, I lose my Medicaid waiver. Yet if I didn't have this income restriction, I could still receive my Social Security, disability, and Medicaid. So all of those different services have different income limits, putting me in a box where I can't make more than a certain amount of money, or I can't work more than a certain amount of hours, keeping me in that poverty level where I can't be fully independent to the best of my ability because of my financial restriction. So as an advocate, that's a really difficult position to be in, because here I am telling people and advocating for people, yes, you can do it. Yes, be independent. Yes, let me help you look for employment. Yes, let me help you look for housing. Yet I can't be as independent as I want, and I know I could be myself as a person with a disability because of the income restriction. So all that to say, if there is a way that we can work together to better accommodate the income restrictions of the different services, to allow us as individuals with disabilities to make more income for ourselves and be more independent and live more productive lives, it would be for the greater good of all people. I don't believe it's fair from my experience to assume individuals with disabilities will go into nursing homes or will definitely go into group homes. No, we live in a time where people with disabilities like myself, we have so much ability. We want to do it. We want to be in the community. We need to be in the community. I was affected by myself emotionally when the pandemic happened, because I needed community. So I would ask that our voices be heard as self-advocates and individuals with disabilities, and know that we want to be independent and self-sufficient while helping those with disabilities in our same or similar situation become independent as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Lieva. I am so grateful for your witness. As someone who is myself disabled also, it is so important. The voice of self-advocates that are also caregivers or in the caregiving workforce is so invaluable. So thank you for your witness today and for being with us. I want to turn this over to Mr. Paul Sweeney. Mr. Sweeney is the current chair of the board of the ARC of South Florida, and he is a guardian of his brother-in-law, Peter, who has both intellectual and developmental disability. Mr. Sweeney has more than 31 years of experience in child welfare, juvenile justice, and delivery of social and clinical services to children and families in diverse and multicultural and challenging service delivery environments. Mr. Sweeney also served as board member of the ARC of Florida for several years. So Mr. Sweeney, thank you so much for being with us here today. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, I think I got that. Hi, nice to be with you all. I'd like to emphasize that I feel very fortunate in that I've been involved with work that I enjoy doing, and I do, because of my experience, to view the issues regarding services for disability citizens as a professional, as a board member, and also as a guardian. I am a guardian of my brother-in-law, Peter, who I've known, let's see, he was 9 when I met him, and I guess I was a couple of years older. It's in high school. And I saw a child that needed to be helped. So I started to get myself interested and begin to be an active advocate. After my oldest brother, first child, was born and suffered from cerebral palsy, I recognized that this is a field where you need to have not only the interest, but the capability to act on what you think is best and provide relevant services and all of the kind of special attention that persons with disabilities, intellectual disabilities, deserve. I'm very proud to work with the ARC of South Florida, and for a while with the when I sat on a board of the statewide agency. I got the opportunity to see many, many, many people who work in the field, and I must say I have never seen as a dedicated group as those who provide to people with disabilities. Peter was fortunate in the sense that he was always lived with a family and family environment. I met Peter again in high school when I began. I began dating his older sister, who was my age, and I kind of got hooked. I said, this is kind of work that I don't see enough people doing. I don't see enough people interested. So I decided that I was going to make that part of how I lived my life. So in large measure, Peter's responsible for the choices I made in terms of my education. My education was interrupted a little bit when I had to serve in the armed forces, but came right back. And when I was married and my family moved my family to Florida, 1972, and Peter was still living with his parents in New York. They were getting older, and in 1991, since they were both having serious health issues, moved to Florida, a few blocks away from where I lived with my wife, their daughter, and my 2 children. And we began looking for services because both knew that their illnesses were eventually going to succumb to, and they moved down so that they would have the opportunity to get help as they age and as their health declines. But all because Peter could then become more involved in his world. And fortunately, Pete's mother died in 1994 from a cancer, and her father in 95 from a heart attack. And my wife and I looked back at how fortuitous it was that they made that move, because Pete fit right in. He's a friendly, gregarious person, and again, he's the reason that I made some of the choices I made in terms of my vocation and joining agencies and advocating. And my introduction to the local ARC here was again because of another dedicated person in my life, who I knew from previous jobs. And the more I got involved, the more I recognized that there are people that have disabilities who can make major improvements in their life and the way they are able to adjust to their illness and provide the best possible situation in terms of their overall happiness and ability to be functional to whatever extent they are. And it's something that we need to do a better job, we collectively as a society, to deal with these kinds of persons who with limited ability, but high probability that they can maximize whatever it is that can give them the best shot at a meaningful and joyful life. So I've been involved with it. And again, as I said, I've met tremendous people who work. It's not something you simply can do to earn a paycheck. There's a lot of other avenues to do that. But to see the adjustment, to see the accomplishments that people can make when many before them thought that they didn't have any opportunity, that they were just going to have to be, taken care of by someone for all of their life, which in Pete's case is true to some extent. I mean, he's limited in terms of his abilities. He doesn't read. He really he has good language skills, and he's a very loving person. He's taken to all of the friends that were in mine and my wife's circle, and of course his relatives now are limited pretty much just to my family and the family that he's known from his involvement with the agency folks.
Mr. Sweeney, I know we are coming up on time here. I want to be cognizant of time for our attendees, but know how grateful I am for your witness today and telling us a little bit about Peter and your family and your journey as a family through both care and caregiving. So thank you so much for your time and for your work as the chair of the board of the ARC in South Florida. I want to turn it over to our the folks who are going to close us out here. Mr. Gabe Parra and Mr. Alan Ambromowitz. Mr. Parra brings nearly 35 years of senior management experience in the nonprofit field. Before becoming the executive director of the ARC of South Florida, he had several positions within the organization. Mr. Parra currently serves in several committees and task forces for other not-for-profits, including the Government Affairs Committee for the ARC of South Florida, the Older Adults Task Force of Miami-Dade, and the Supportive Decision-Making for Florida Coalition. And then Mr. Alan Ambromowitz was appointed as CEO of the ARC of Florida on June 1st of this year. Previously, Alan served as the gubernatorially appointed executive director of the statewide Guardian and Lytton program since 2010. Mr. Ambromowitz holds a Juris Doctorate from Florida State University and a master's degree in public administration and sociology. So I'm going to turn it over to them to close out our call today. But thank you so much to all of our storytellers, all of our folks here who are able to provide witness to the immense importance of this injection of additional funds to the South Florida area in the form of home and community-based services funding. So Alan and Gabe, I will turn it over to you.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much, specifically to Madame Deputy Secretary for such great introduction of the Better Care Act job and what's happening up in the Hill with all these decision making. And special thanks to Emily, and who is the White House Office of Public Engagement, and Nicole, who's from the ARC of USA, for contacting and inviting the ARC of Florida and the ARC of South Florida to host this wonderful roundtable today. When President Biden released his American Jobs Plan this spring, he made a bold promise to solidify the infrastructure of our care and our economy, alongside efforts to improve roads, bridges, the power grid, broadband, and many more items in his agenda. Building on the spirit and promise of Biden's proposal, legislators up in the Hill introduced the Better Care Jobs Act, which would allocate hundreds of billions of dollars towards strengthening home and community-based services, which is what we're talking about today. Addressing all the disparities and the accesses to these essential services, and elevating the quality of jobs for our direct care workers who provide these services every day. And you heard from our storyteller, Dorothy Washington, who's one of our workers at the ARC of South Florida, how much she struggled through this pandemic and keeping our home safe, but even herself safe. Our state of Florida, existing ACBS infrastructure has been fragmented, underfunded, inadequate, and devastating consequence during this COVID-19 pandemic. We never thought that this was going to hit us so hard, and it's still going on, and we have to be very conscious of how we have to protect ourselves and protect the ones that we serve. For years, the ACBS providers have been unable to recruit enough workers, even before pandemic. And to meet this demand, and you heard it. You've heard it not only from Ms. Washington, you've heard it from Ms. Yolanda, how important it is to increase these salaries for these workers across our sectors. Our consumers are struggling, as you heard from Jasenia, to access and pay for the services that they desperately want and need. In addition, despite the invaluable role that direct care workers still face, wages and adequate benefits are still very important, and the advancement of those opportunities to make themselves better with training, as you heard from Yolanda, she wants somebody that when she's not there, or when she wants to have them to come in to help Carla, that these people that are coming into her home are well trained and well compensated. The Better Care job will designate over $100 million to the states to develop the ACBS infrastructure improvement plans. This funding will enable the state of Florida to access their existing Medicaid funding ACBS system, identify those gaps and disparities, diagnose the workforce challenges, and designate appropriate, equitable, and sustainable services, all with the input from a range of stakeholders, including the consumers, the family members, the direct care providers, and all others. And you heard those stories today. Those stories are true. The stories of Dorothy, the stories of Yolanda, and her care for Carla, the stories of Jasenia, and how as a self-advocate and as a professional, they've struggled in the past year and a half. And most of all, the struggle, not the struggle, but the issues that Mr. Paul Sweeney brought upon. Hearing this from me almost every month of how we struggle to bring qualified people to work for us. And due to the lack of the funding that we have, we can't pay those decent salaries. Again, I want to thank you all for listening today. And I just want to leave you one statement. Only one. The ARC of South Florida will continue to advocate ensuring that all people with disabilities and older adults of the South Florida community have quality, long-term care services, and that the direct care workers are paid fair wages and receive fair benefits. Thank you so much, and I greatly appreciate all your attendance. And we look forward to doing these more often so we can really inform the public of what's going on in our field.
Gabe, thanks for selecting some great storytellers. First of all, Emily did a great job bringing out the storytellers, letting them tell their stories. And I gotta say it, the interpreter made me feel the emotions of the storyteller. So I appreciate the interpreter in not just relaying the story, but ensuring people felt the emotions that were being said. Deputy Secretary Palm said it all. But I want to point out a couple groups, because the ARC of Florida stands with the self-advocates, and we will continue to stand with them and fight with them. I do want to make a special note of the waiver support coordinators. They have a tough time too, as they put together what services individuals with developmental disabilities have when there's no choices and there's no available options because the funding's not there for people that are trying to provide the services. I know the waiver support coordinators care so much about the people that they're supporting. And the direct support professionals, I really appreciate you. I've been traveling the last 3 months, visiting every ARC chapter around the state, meeting self-advocates, meeting direct support workers, meeting everyone involved in what we do, and the passion and care that you have during this difficult time. I'm just stunned and amazed. I would say that what the Better Care, Better Jobs is, from my perspective watching it is aligning our budget with our values. I appreciate what's happening in the advocacy. If you talk about it in terms of inclusion, you also need choice. Inclusion with choice actually creates what State Senator Ben Albritton calls normalcy. And I think without choice, we have real problems. And the Better Care, Better Jobs Act is so comprehensive, it's going to make a difference in everyone's life. And what we all want, and we appreciate the goal, is that we want to let people live up to their potential. So thank you, Emily. Amazing program you put on. I appreciate you. And we need to do more of these as we get the word out.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Gabe. Thank you to all of our storytellers for bringing shining a light on the issues, the realities that are infecting South Florida. We know how important this funding is, to Alan's point, to align our budget with our values. And we couldn't have had better folks, again, to shine light on the realities of the need for this funding. So thank you all for being here today. We look forward to working with you all again in the future, and have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.